Now, you've read the title. It's a retyping that included actually this. Of course you're forgiven, but damn you for being a liar. And I don't know if it's aimed at me. Now, in the same hour that comment was made, among others, another set of comments were made. I made a video because someone brought up something and asked me about something. And basically it amounted to someone pointing out that there's a YouTube channel that had a video, and it's just a video, that made a claim about something. Now, I went off on a completely different subject, and I'll be reading pretty much the text from it in a little bit, but let's read the response to that video and then try to figure out what caused it. But it is, "You're a moron. Thank you for showing me how stupid a role model can be." And then, of course, "You're forgiven. Damn you for being a liar." Now, I don't know if that was directed at me or at the channel I was reviewing. I honestly don't, because of this. Thank you. This is in the same hour. I think I sent you this to you, the subject I was talking about. "I think Canada is under the Crown, under control of England, or part of the Commonwealth." I would have to absolutely look up whether or not that is true, because I don't know. The Falkland Islands, there was a war. The Queen of England actually made a decision that affected the Falkland Islands. Whether that's because of some connection, official or unofficial, or just deciding how a Falklands War should be done. Under control of England doesn't necessarily mean that they're part of England. Remember, the United States is founded from a bunch of colonies that were controlled by and owned by England, but affected by it absolutely even after we became an independent country. Trudeau has to obey orders from the British Crown, is presumed in the statement here. Maybe, maybe not. I don't believe so, but that doesn't mean that isn't true. There are protectorates and rules and agreements and that sort of thing. The United States controls Guam or something like that, right? Trudeau Grabbing American People, who financed the truckers with seizure, is honorable. Goddamn millions of dollars damage to Canada, all banked by American right-wing bastards. Now, I want to point out something about, if anybody's curious about my opinion of it, civil disobedience is still disobedience. But the idea with civil disobedience is it's supposed to affect a situation heavily enough that it forces the powers that be to come to the bargaining table. And in order to bargain, you have to have something to threaten them with. You cannot agree that people can go on strike and basically make it to where your garbage doesn't get picked up and the buses don't run and the trains stop, which absolutely fucks up the infrastructure and the economy of a country or a neighboring state or something like that. You can't approve of these sorts of things unilaterally deciding that the truckers were evil. They did sabotage the country. The country of Canada put up with it for a while until it literally got to the point that it was financially backbreaking. I don't know if there was any attempt at negotiating with them. Having a foreign set of entities bankroll them so that the truckers aren't risking anything. They are literally being bankrolled so that they don't go without. I know a couple of dozen people who work as independent truck drivers. They would not be able to do this because it would mean them going broke, their family going broke, and them maybe losing their house or the conventional car or maybe the truck. Now, that would be a risk if somebody was willing to take it. That's actually, even if they were doing something I didn't agree with, I would understand that they're risking something. And one of the complaints was, and of course we don't know if it's factual, is that they weren't risking anything. They were just using their vehicles as a way to block the road. Now, I want to point out the Trustafarians, a good term for it, libtards, protesting in Portland, Oregon, chronically in the city of Portland, Oregon, about murders of black people on the other side of the United States. Breaking windows where I could hear them audibly from where I was standing, trying to sip a cup of coffee in a town that at the time hadn't done anything. They were just using it as an excuse to ransack Apple stores and burn things. I object to that too. But it did force the powers that be in the state of Oregon and in the city to take notice, to the point that Trump sent in a Gestapo-style goon squad, if you want to think of it that way. Do I agree with the truckers doing this? No, they're doing it over mass mandates. This is out of line, in my opinion, but I don't agree with them. But really, do I have a right to critique that? I'm in favor of unionization only because it's effective. I at one time could have joined an electronics engineering technicians union or an electricians union or a dozen others for representation so that I could say, I'm a union member, we're part of a group that negotiated a pay level that's minimum. We don't get living wages unless we demand them. Okay, at the 5-minute and 45-second mark, you're going to hear something from me. I don't know whether the conservative or liberal idea or ideal about either of these kind of protest groups is acceptable. I don't know. I only know it made it to where it was an untenable situation in Portland, Oregon for me to survive at one point. And then the pandemic did more. And then the lockdown made it worse. I'm doing a video about the lockdown. So, that was the first comment. Then next. Where do you get this bullshit you're spinning about 1779? I have studied this at Baylor University. Your or you silly folktales are, well, now at 9 minutes, getting sane. Yes, I was arguing devil's advocate and Christ's advocate? Beelzebub advocate. The USA is a Commonwealth subscriber. USA is a member of the Commonwealth. No, we're not. Because we say we're not officially, so does all of the members of the Commonwealth. None of them consider us that way. The United States treated at one time England as a 51st state to push around. This is the complaint from the population in the UK. Stop making silly slips of the tongues. Remember the Opium Wars? Yeah, that doesn't really matter though. One country and another one deciding to do the same stupid damn things isn't the same as one being ruled by the other or being part of a commonwealth. Next, we're part of NATO and a bunch of other organizations. That's bad enough. At least if we were a member state of England, it would be clear and cut and simple, and we would be obedient dogs. Instead, we end up ordering each other around as compatriots. You're a moron. Thank you for showing how stupid a role model can be. Of course, you're forgiven. Damn you for being a liar. Now, the rest of it was the person saying, I just cut and paste an entire YouTube channel to your channel. And it was literally a string of text that really should be edited. It was hard to dig out the actual comments from this person. The U.S. is not a member of a commonwealth or ruled by another country, period, full stop. And if you studied at Baylor University, apparently something else, that's fine. The United States is separated from England, period, full stop. Because, and this is the thing, I'm divorced from my ex-wife. She says I'm divorced from her. There's no inconsistency. And at one time, yes, I did this. I made sure she made a declaration 2 different years. We're both still divorced and have no ties to each other. Because if she says she considers us under specific rules in a particular culture, in a particular country, she's in the European Union, she can get away with this, that we're still married, we're legally tied again, and I have to deal with a court case. Listen and believe, even if it's bullshit. Declaration of divorce was never sent. I never received the paperwork, so I made sure I tricked my ex-wife into acknowledging, well, I sent it to you. Is there any problems? No. We got it notarized, and I did it again a couple of years later because I lied, I did, and said that I lost the piece of paper. Why? Because I know better. It's what everybody agrees to is reality. If you and a friend decide that you never touched toes in the pool, you never did. Pinky swear. But what really happens is maybe different. When it comes to the United States and every other country, they have agreed upon shared mythology about our past. Can you dig up paperwork that shows something other than that? You can find paperwork where people say all sorts of things. And every time I look it up, I'll find out it was an assertion by someone. Or was it confirmed? There are writings by some of the founding fathers that are unhinged later in life, or when they literally got drunk. They said, yeah, we preserve it, even though it's embarrassing to the person. We found it later after the guy died. It's an embarrassment, but the person did write a letter that was embarrassing, hitting on someone else's wife or whatever. But the point is, just because someone wrote it doesn't mean it's a law or a reality. It could be just ravings. Every time I've tried to look into whether or not the United States is controlled by any other entity, or the UK is controlled by the United States, that's another flip side version, I always find the same thing. It's a lie. And sometimes it's a lie from the people who would be in authority at the time. There are people in England who kept claiming the United States was always going to be if you're not aware of it at the 10-minute and 45-second mark, there are people in the United Kingdom, as we call it now, in Great Britain, after they lost a war to a stack of stupid colonies, one of many, this was happening a lot, that they would refuse to ever acknowledge it and put down in their diary and official statements as a mayor somewhere in England that the United States was still a colony of England. It wasn't true, but they kept saying it. So you can dig that up. That doesn't make it true. The U.S. isn't in the current British Commonwealth of former colonies or any other entity other than agreed upon peer-to-peer level. Did the U.S. fail to fulfill any of the terms of any treaty or debt that they're legally still, that would make them still a colony in any way? And the answer is no, because England and every other Commonwealth entity and every other entity and even subgroups and populations within each of these countries have all acknowledged over time the United States is an independent entity and is no longer a colony. That it doesn't matter, whether they, touch toes in the water. They're acknowledging this. This is an agreed upon, if you choose to believe it's a fiction, it's an agreed upon fiction. And more importantly, that just means that both countries are agreeing that neither of them is a colony of the other as of now. 2, you cannot invalidate the laws or the rules or the authenticity of the U.S. government simply because you wish to by claiming that you can't find every single I dotted and T crossed. Both countries have decided that England lost, the United States won, and the United States became independent at the 13 colony mark, and have ratified, repeatedly acknowledged the USA did that in the Treaty of France. Also, the Treaty of France and the French peace agreement, the only component that's left in it, and that's very significant, I mentioned that, is that all the countries still acknowledge that. Very suspiciously, that is the only part that's left because all the other pieces have been considered null and void or overridden by new agreements. England says, well, we have no claim to any waters off the coastline of the United States. And then later on, well, we can request it, and they would pay for, let's say, fishing rights. Well, that would undo, you'd think, the previous agreement. No, it just means they've done a new agreement. It's been 100 years. Congress ratified the Articles in 1783, and by 1783, near the end of it, this treaty was signed. Separate peace treaties between all of these entities were signed acknowledging it, and even recently this was acknowledged because they state the sovereign state of the United States, the sovereign state or sovereign entity of the British Empire, and eventually Great Britain or whatever. In the words they use to name themselves and acknowledge each other, they come with a tacit acknowledgement. This is an independent country. If somebody makes an agreement with the United States and acknowledges it as an independent country, but it isn't, is it valid? If we decide that North Taiwan is an entity owned by Taiwan, all of our agreements with China are wrong. So we have to acknowledge them as an independent country. They actually require that in the wording. That's where it comes from. It's built into the language of our agreements. So if you are saying that I'm lying about something, I'd like to know that's what's going on. You may be complaining about the other channel. This person has lots of videos, thousands of postings. I don't care. I was discussing the subject matter. But if you said I lied about something, like I do with everybody else, you have to tell me what I lied about. It's not a lie for me to explain this way. And in the previous video, if I did lie, say when and what it was. I'm not a role model. I'm a role player in this life, just like everyone else. And that role is I try to find out what's going on, just like you did. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.